Sabo just became an emperor, and everything the government used to get him there is a lie, not a small lie. A lie the entire world bought into. Murder, kidnapping, and assassination attempt on a celestial dragon, 3 massive crimes pinned on Sabo. And here's the insane part, he didn't commit a single one of them. And yet the result is real. A 5th emperor was born, with a title all his own, and a bounty that's probably about to make everyone's jaw drop. How does a lie build a real throne? Okay, let's slow down first, because to understand how insane this really is, you need to know what actually happened at the Reverie Dot in chapter 1083. Sabo confirms to Dragon and Ivankov that he completed all 3 objectives of his real mission. He destroyed the symbol of the world nobles, rescued Bartholomew Kuma and freed as many slaves as possible, and destroyed the Holy Land's food stockpiles. These are massive feats, direct sabotage against the heart of the world government inside the most protected territory on the planet, but the public credit he actually got has nothing to do with any of that. Kurubi, yes, that Kurubi, now director of the Naval Investigation Department, reveals that the general public believes Sabo is responsible for 3 completely different things: the assassination of King Cobra of Alabasta, the kidnapping of Princess Vivi, and the attempted assassination of the celestial dragon Charlos. None of those 3 are true. But this is where things start getting strange. Okay, stick with me here, because this is the part most people skip right past. To us, the readers, King Cobra was one of the most just and honest monarchs in all of One Piece. But to the average citizen, living on some random island, the name Nefertari carries a very different weight. The Nefertari were one of the 20 founding families of the world government, and even though they were the only family to give up their seat at Mary Goes to stay with their own people in Alabasta, that's not what jumps out to someone who only reads the headline. The result? King Cobra's assassination was met with applause, because everybody hates the celestial dragons, and suddenly there was a man brave enough to kill one, and that exact same bias is what turned Vivi's supposed kidnapping into something people saw as positive. A man of action, strategic, capable of taking a noble hostage as a future power play. That's the character built entirely out of rumors that became the foundation for everything else attributed to him afterward, the attempted assassination of celestial dragon Charlos. That one actually happened, but it was carried out by Sai and Leo of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, authorized by Myasgard himself, after Charlos tried to enslave Princess Shirahoshi for a second time using Kuma as a weapon. The public never knew any of those details. All they knew was that an attempt took place, and since Sabo was already branded as King Cobra's killer and Vivi's kidnapper, everyone simply assumed he was behind this too. And here's the real turning point. Countries from the 8 Nations Revolution started hanging Sabo's portrait at their central meeting points, like a supreme leader. In chapter 1083, Dragon explains that 12 nations tried to revolt against the celestial tribute, and 8 of them succeeded, stopping their resource exports and putting themselves behind Sabo as their symbol, and this might be exactly where Oda left his biggest clue. There's a huge difference between the kind of worship Luffy gets and the kind Sabo gets. When people idolize Luffy, they raise a mug with a smile. He inspires hope. When people idolize Sabo, they raise weapons in anger. His fame isn't appealing to hope. It's appealing to frustration and violence against kings. And that's perfectly consistent with his new title. Let's break down what actually defines an emperor in One Piece, because there's no fixed rule saying there can only be 4. In the Ace novel, it's revealed that before the current system, the 3 greatest pirates of the New World were Galdi, Roger, Edward Newgate, and Chinjiao, known as the rulers of the New World. The modern 4-emperor system only became fixed once Shanks appeared, about 6 years before the current story, and my theory is that Shanks didn't conquer territory the traditional way. I believe he united islands that had been rejected, the ones nobody else wanted, and built his own empire where there didn't seem to be any room. He changed the rule from 3 to 4 purely through strength. In other words, the number of emperors was never fixed. Now pay attention to the Japanese, because this changes everything. Yanku is a contraction of Yan 4 and Ku from Kute, emperor. It literally means for emperors. It's the name of the group itself. When Luffy was called the 5th emperor back in chapter 903, he didn't receive that construction. He was called Gobangute, the 5th emperor of the sea, using the full word Kute instead of the contracted Ku that indicates Luffy was never a member of the Yanku. but someone who exists alongside them, and now Sabo has his own title, the exact same way. Entai Flame Emperor comes directly from the Daiankai Ace's ultimate technique, except now, instead of naming an attack, the term names a person. But here's the detail nobody talks about. The parallels between Luffy in Chapter 903 and Sabo right now are almost point for point. Luffy confronted Big Mom, an empress undefeated for decades. Sabo confronted the world government, a power undefeated for centuries, and came out victorious. Luffy united 7 pirate crews, totaling over 5,000 followers in his grand fleet. Sabo, after the Lulusia incident, has exactly 7 nations behind him out of the 8 that revolted. Luffy's strategy caused the destruction of Big Mom's castle. Sabo's strategy destroyed the Celestial Dragon Skull and the Holy Land's food stockpiles. Luffy fought 2 of Big Mom's high-ranking officers. Sabo fought 2 admirals, while Karasu and Morley held off Fujitora and Ryokugu so he could infiltrate the castle alone. It's almost like Sabo read the narrator's speech about Luffy and followed it step by step, and if that's true, his bounty needs to reflect it. Sabo's last known bounty is only 600 to million berries. That's nowhere close to Emperor level. A bounty isn't exactly a power scale, but it does represent a threat level. And after everything Sabo did, and more importantly, everything he was falsely accused of doing, I'd be shocked if his new bounty isn't somewhere around 3 billion berries. And there's one detail that outweighs any false accusation. The 5 elders know that Sabo has seen Aimu. He's one of the only people alive outside the government who knows the empty throne is occupied, that Aimu actually exists, and that the 5 elders are literal monsters. That alone makes him an existential threat, and what stands out even more is that Sabo's influence may have already surpassed Monkey D. Dragon himself, considered the world's most wanted criminal. If that's true, we're talking about absurd numbers. There's no official figure who decides who becomes an emperor, but if there were someone who could effectively crown one, that person would be Big News Morgans. When Sabo returns to Kamabaka Kingdom in Chapter 1082, Ivankov calls him Flame Emperor. Kid and Ivankov could only have heard that name from one place, the newspaper. If Morgan's paper published Entai, then the world already gave birth to a 5th emperor, an accidental emperor, born out of false accusations, government conspiracies, and the people's fury against their own rulers. Personally, I think Oda has been building to this since the Reverie. And if I'm right, the moment this gets confirmed is going to break the fandom. If this theory is right, it changes how we read every single chapter involving the world government from here on out. But I want to know what you think. Did Dragon plan this from the start, or is this one giant coincidence? Drop your theory in the comments. And if you want to understand Dragon's full plan behind all of this, the next video is linked right here.